Can you tell a little bit more about the experience being in that inner circle? Now, you talked about these men all being straight, but turned homosexual or engaging in homosexual acts. I mean, was that? Yeah, get into as much or little detail or.
Well, I'll just stay with what my experience is, because I don't know. Quite honestly, there were, up to 5, 6 of us at any one time. Low points, 4 of us that were really on the inner core.
Yeah.
And our job was to take care of John Roger and do whatever he needed and whatever else. And at night, the mythology was that he was ruling the universe and keeping the evil away, stuff like this. He supposedly didn't sleep.
Mm-hmm.
But, anybody who was in his bedroom all night, he was sleeping, snoring like the rest of us. But, you made up stories about this. But your job was to make sure he would have aches and pains. You end up massaging him endlessly, and he'd spend interminable hours with blackout curtains in his room and his king size bed that was all whatever, and he would watch Turner Broadcasting, everything. I've never seen so many movies in my life as I did with him. He was like, yeah, that's all he did. It was just like veg. He would literally.
And he just wanted you there to hang out with him.
Yeah, we'd hang out, and he would then.
Were you all there with him?
No, just one at a time.
I
mean, during the daytimes there was business that went on.
Yeah.
We did our business together, but then you would be the one to be able to watch him do the night watch, and he would exchange. It was like, I didn't know. I was so naive that I thought I was the only one that he was having sex with. I mean, that's how. I mean, you got to realize that this is like, and when it first sensorially came into my awareness that he was having sex with somebody else, was in the middle of an insight seminar I was conducting at Universal Studios in Los Angeles, and he was sitting in the back tables with one of the church attorneys. For those who may have been in the group, it wasn't Ken Meyer, so that'll target.
Okay.
I went up to meditate on a break in my room, and I heard John Rogers' room open. It was like a door between us, but I knew he was in there. And I figured, well, he's got this other guy with him who's the attorney. And all of a sudden I hear these audible sounds of what's going on over there. And I mean, I could not take that away. I mean, there's no way to not hear that anymore. That was the first awakening, the fact that this was not.
Why? Because it broke your heart?
John Roger had stated, I had broken every rule of every fiber of every piece of my being. I mean, the act of sex with this man was so repulsive that it was something I could not. I mean, of course I judged myself for not being loving enough to be whatever with this man. And there were times when I would actually get through it and stuff like this. But when he told me that this is something that only I had with him,
mm-hmm.
I figured, well, this is, I guess, one of the highest blessings. How can I be so evil as to be not appreciating it? So, I'm struggling soulfully.
Would you feel guilty for not enjoying it?
Exactly. Then? Precisely. Exactly right. How could I ever be in a place not to be just utterly grateful for being and having this experience?
How was that initiated?
Well, that's hard because, again, I was a slow learner. I mean, some of the other staff members had told me that they weren't as naive as I was, but it took me about a year to really wake up to that this was going to actually have to happen. Because I was all the time thinking, I was still in that original programming that says, this is my evilness. Why should I bring this in even to my thoughts? But after arriving around with him and him saying, well, there's Michael, he's gay, but he doesn't know it yet. There's a part of me that starts to question, well, how is it possible not to know you're gay?
Yeah.
And then but the other question is, well, maybe I don't know, which is the whole reason he's implanting these doubts is a part of his process of trying to corral
But
me.
what was the first experience like? Like, did he get you drunk or something?
No. He didn't. I mean, he fired me every day practically. The people he would take me down and debase me in front of hundreds, thousands of people. Hey, I was his whipping boy. And he literally would fire me probably every week. And I would try and figure out how it was that I was not measuring up.
So you just were under constant.
I mean, it was psychological torture. And it was to the point where I was out at Chart House out in Malibu, right on Highway 1 there. And I was in there, and it's a scary thing. I mean, I never had drug experience that as bad as this one. Where I got into this mental thing. I was sitting there with him. I'd driven his Lincoln Continental.
Uh-huh.
And I got into this thing that said he can think, he knows everything I'm thinking. And I got into this negative thing. I said, I can't think that. I can't think that. I mean, I got to a point of psychosis, literally, that when I walked out of there and I got into the car, I couldn't drive. I didn't know the judgment when I was leaving and trying to merge on Highway 1. I mean, I didn't know how far these cars were away from each other. I was literally in an altered state that was really so dark, I cannot tell you. It was dark, dark, dark beyond anything I'd ever had.
I'm just imagining you are stripped of all self-worth, of all.
It was a hell. It was like a physiological thing, though. I mean, I look back and say, how can you even induce that in a human being? But that's the psychological strain I was under because of this. Well, anyway, so at some point, he's fired me, and this time he actually has decided I'm going to go down and stay at Prana, which is the ashram in Los Angeles. And to everybody else, they're begging to get in there. And for me, being on staff, it would be like hell. This is the Christmas before. He had taken the rest of the staff members and gone to Australia with them, and he left me in LA all alone at the house. He says, I'm not going to take my pain with me, is what he said. So I spent the entire Christmas.
This is just like an abuse, being raised in an abusive household.
You got it.
But you were
It is an abusive relation.
man.
Cults are abusive relationships. This, if you want to look at Scientology, and people are complaining about Miscavige, he's doing exactly the same thing. I mean, people have to understand there is a mind manipulation that is so deep and so profound.
Yeah.
You're taking what is most holy and the striving of a human being and perverting it and basically inverting it in a very sick way. It's a sick thing to do. But anyway, so get to the point. He then had come back, and I had worked so hard for this entire 2-week period while we were down in Australia. And I had to. He said, if you don't figure it out by the time you get back, we're going to be sending you to Prana. And I was scared shitless. I spent Christmas. It was hell. So I went to pick him up at the airport.
Mm-hmm.
And I put on this brightest sort of, I've got it, JR. I figured it out. And the part of me inside was saying, I don't know what the fuck is happening. It was just, this is the point. And then I greeted him, and I just knew in that moment, he knew that I wasn't there, whatever there was. He knew he could see it, and I just crashed. Well, anyway, he told the staff at this point, I knew he was serious because he said, okay, we're going to have Paulie do this and that. He was actually taking measures and making it step-by-step process. Edgar Veitia was the successor to the Travelers in the room at the time. And I just begged. I said, what do I need to do?
Wow, yeah, that is
I was
just
on my knees.
Yeah.
He had this sort of
Begging your abuser.
Begging my abuser. And Edgar shut the door. He had walked out. And there's some part of me that said, I haven't tried this. And I just put my head in his lap. And then the next thing I know is that was involved. I mean, but I must say, as horrible as it was in terms of physically, after the act was done, everything turned around. Everything. I could do no wrong, never be fired again. Doors were open. I was suddenly the most pristine, most whatever. It was like, I cannot tell you, it was like a year of agony just went away. And it's like, I was thinking to myself, how the fuck did I not realize how to do this sooner? That was the attitude I had.
Because it was so relieving.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Well, anyway.
It took extraordinary circumstances then for even that to happen. It wasn't like he
I tell you
really tried to manipulate the circumstances so that it, he wasn't like getting you, like I said, getting you drunk or drugging you.
I mean, he had been
anything.
drugging me all year long, though. I mean, what's the process of this lifting you up and throwing you down, lifting you up and then in front of 1,000 people saying, I have
You
You know,
think he had sex in mind? Like, this is all going to lead to that?
I'm sure he did. I'm sure this was all a process of corralling me to the point I had no choice. And so that he could say, I did it out of my choice. He didn't make me do it.
Yeah.
I begged him for it. You know, yeah, but it's a sick thing, but it happens all the time. I mean, it's like, but you have to
I wonder if people who work with unhealthy domestic partnerships or, battered wives or whatever they say, if they see the parallels between the two, because it strikes me as similar.
Anytime you've got control in a relationship that is violent like this, and I
Yeah.
don't consider this a sexual relationship, I consider it a violent
Mm-hmm,
relationship.
mm-hmm.
It's an exercise of violence. And that's the thing, that when you try and recover from it later, you have to really look deep and say what part of yourself was so, how dark a place you had to go to your own self-worth, like you said.